Hey, so I just finished watching She-Hulk, and let's say two things up front. I did not like it, but I would like to talk more about it in the future, like I did with my episode about the inactive protagonist, even though only just one of you watched it. I kind of like to do that content when I have the time where I delve deeper into some writing techniques or general story narrative tricks or do's and don'ts that I know of and that I can pick off and then use an example. I think that's good, and I would like to um, contribute to that. And that being said, She-Hulk has been quite great in providing me with different scenarios where I can say, okay, this is like a typical writing problem that needs to be solved. A lot of writing is just about solving issues. Um, and here's how often they're solved. Here's an interesting way of getting them solved. And let's say in the case of She-Hulk, here's a lot of try not to solve it this way. So I'll definitely dive deeper into this. But today, for this video, I'll just talk about the entire show as a whole because now it's finished and now I can see the whole thing. And I like the idea. I like the idea of She-Hulk. Of course, I don't want to do this too much because I also don't. I don't want to talk about. I don't want to compare the Marvel shows and movies too much to the comic books. Mostly because I don't know that much about the comic books, but also I think they should be able to stand on their own. I think they have been good on standing on their own, and I think it's fine if they want to do their own thing. Maybe the Mandarin wasn't that well done, but I'm not gonna criticize any Marvel or any other show for not sticking strictly to the source material. There's plenty of um, some of my favorite medias that doesn't do that too well. I can just mention Watchmen. I think was a good adaptation in a lot of ways of the comic book because the comic is um, has different ending, sort of different ending, and has some things in between that were cut out. There's a whole discussion about that. I want to talk about She-Hulk. Of course, I am aware of the comics. I read them at some point. Marvel in general. I'm not sure if I had that many actual She-Hulk, but I am aware of her and her comic backstory, especially the not meta story, but the actual story of the comic fighting with the comic code at one point. So that proves it. So of course I like the idea because the idea has worked. They have made these comics for what, 20, 30 years. It can work. This character with these limits in this world, with this setup, it can work. And I like that. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about, a female Hulk that isn't about strength, um, that is in control and has this role of a lawyer so that she can talk about superheroes and mostly the consequence of some of the superheroes' actions and decision. And there's that word again. It's a thing that I really, really like. You might have picked up. I tried to mention it. Consequence. When actions, decisions have consequence in shows, in games, I usually like it because that makes it seem real. Because in real life, things have consequences. I like when shows have consequence with the action. It makes things seem real. So I thought this could work. You can have this superhero lawyer talking about diving into superhero things. And I'm probably going to repeat this a lot with She-Hulk, where it's like the execution, and I think I can quote Lindsay Ellis on this, execution trumps intent. It doesn't matter how good intention, how good ideas you had, it's how you executed them, the result. And I think She-Hulk missed a lot of the execution. But I like the idea of a female lawyer, She-Hulk, Hulk with in control, not that strong. I like this setup. I like the fourth wall breaking idea. and I think I liked some of them. Actually, I liked some of the first one because there was one where Jennifer. Let's say I might spoil stuff in this show. I think you might have watched it already. Um, I'm not sure I can recommend it that much. Again, my curiosity is well, Marvel, Star Wars. I will have to watch. I think forever unless it becomes really really bad. I don't know. I haven't started Andor yet. Haven't heard terrible good things about it, but it's definitely something I'll watch just because my curiosity it's invested in that. So where was it going? The fourth wall breaking. There is one in the beginning where Jennifer Walters, the She-Hulk, is addressing the camera, the audience, so she doesn't hear what I guess it's her employer, but there's someone's talking and she doesn't hear it, and she comments on it. She said, "Oh, I didn't hear what he said." It doesn't have much consequence, but it has that, so she doesn't hear it. He doesn't say anything terribly plot related that comes up later, where they bring it out back and say, "Oh, you weren't listening at that time, so now this part," and that's okay. It doesn't have to be consequences ad infinitum all the way down. But I like that. Um, I like um, I like the post credit scenes. There was some there, and they made me wonder if. Okay, so let's finish off with the post credit scene. They are a good way. You might even say they're Marvel tradition, at least in the cinematic universe. But they're also like a good way to either set something up. Some of the good ones did that for the next episode, or call back to something that happens within an episode, or make a positive spin. Even though you end on like cliffhanger, you can have the post credits be a little happy, or a little joke, a little gag, so that the audience actually ends on a high note, not of like this. Even though you end on a cliffhanger with despair, and be like, "Oh, what's going to happen? Oh no!" You can end with a laugh, and that's probably the best. So you kind of like have a little of the best of both worlds. Audience interested, what happens next, but the last thing they remember is laughing. They had fun. But then I wonder, because the post-credit scene stopped, I think, after episode 5, and She-Hulk, is it 8 or 9 episodes? Can't remember. Um, and I think episode 5 is the last one that they call back to it. Like Jennifer actually mentioned it in her fourth wall. She's like, maybe there will be something fun in, I don't know if she calls it post-credit or sting or whatever. But she mentioned it, and then that was the last one they did, and it didn't get mentioned again. One of the post-credit episodes, or maybe they did one more, but they weren't consistent, is my point. Like they were, for the first 5, there were one for every episode of like post-credit, and then they stopped. There was like there's a post, I can't remember, let's say it wasn't post-credit, just because to be technical, there was one that showed the helmet of an upcoming superhero cameo, or a little bit more than a cameo, a little bit bigger. But it showed that, but I think that was kind of like the actual end of the episode, not post-credit. So I think the post-credit was, maybe they took them out because they thought they were bad, because one of the post-credit was, you have probably seen this, is She-Hulk twerking. Some can think it's funny. I'm not that upset about it. Like I don't think I'm upset at all. I just thought it was weird. It wasn't a decision I would have made. But some people were very upset about it. You could say it's off character, but it's an episode that featured a rapper called Megan Thee Stallion, if I remember. And I thought she was a fictional character. I'm not in that, so maybe I'm just not the target audience for She-Hulk, because I had no idea what Megan Thee Stallion, who Megan Thee Stallion was, what she did. I thought it was a fictional character. I'm upset that she's not called Megan the Mare, because I think that would be the correct term. Like a stallion is a male horse, right? But who can say these days? I get it. It sounds better to be a stallion than a mare. go for it. Um, so but it's justified because Jennifer, the character of Jennifer, is a fan of this rapper, this artist. So she would enjoy it and dance to her music, and yeah, that's where we are. But then that post credit scene got a lot of criticism, and I don't know if they then stopped afterwards. I should probably address the CGI. Isn't there's a lot of criticism? I think it's exaggerated to a lot of point where they said, "Oh, it looks like Shrek, look like Fiona." I don't think so. I don't think it looked good, but the whole thing about the CGI is that there is, and now it's talked about freely, that there is a bit of a crisis. There's some videos about it with the VFX CGI industry. How a lot of, and Disney has been brought up as some of the worst, where they are demanding a lot and not giving enough time, having a very strict deadlines or impossible deadlines actually. So there's a lot of overtime, a lot of crunch, which is not good. So I don't want to criticize it actually, even if I could. I thought it looked okay. It didn't pop out to me as being bad. It's just because, of course, you're making Shrek is cartoon. If that was the comparison, Shrek has animated, not realistic, not photorealistic. Of course, She-Hulk is animated as well. So it just has to look different. It has to look photoreal, and that just takes a lot of time, which means that it takes a lot of money. And if the time hasn't been there, you get what you paid for. And if you can have it quick or you can have it good. And I guess supposedly this was a case of where Disney wanted it quick. So that's what I'm thinking with the post-credit scene. Maybe they stopped making them because they said we need to cut some CGI, we need to cut some production. That would be one way to do it. I heard that, I read most of these days, but there was some news about how the writers were told to have less She-Hulk scenes because those would be cheaper, and they talk about it in the ending as well. She's She-Hulk, and then she's told, could you go Jen, not She-Hulk, because that is cheaper. But we're gonna get to the ending. Didn't like it, and I talked a lot about, I like a whole story, like start, beginning, end. That's what I'm talking about. She-Hulk, Rings of Power, and House of Dragon, when they're finished. I don't feel right talking about it in the middle. I don't see the point. I don't know the whole story. Now I do. I know the ending. Gonna talk about it. I didn't like it, and I'm very prone to endings. So if something has a bad ending, it will, for me, reflect bad on the whole experience. Where I can have like a bad experience, but the ending is good. Then I will feel better about the overall thing. Let me get back to She-Hulk. Got a little sidetracked there. The Royal Ocean Film Society is the name of the YouTube channel, and the name of the video is The Visual Effects Crisis. That explains it a lot. Definitely worth a watch. Back to She-Hulk. One of Jen's first clients, when she becomes a designated superhero lawyer, is actually the Abomination. Let me just check what his real name is. Emil Blonsky. Yes, the fictional character that turns into the Abomination, and I thought that was good. I sort of a bit forgot that the Abomination already has a small cameo in Tai-Chi, yeah, the Ten Rings, because I only watched that once. It's Phase 4, I'm not really feeling it. Back to She-Hulk again. I thought that was great. Abomination was called the first villain in the first MCU movie, yeah, I think so, and the first, no, Iron Man was the first, right? Yeah, the second MCU movie, but the first Hulk, and it was great to kind of like bring that back. They haven't done that, and they don't have to, but it helped to sell the whole cohesive universe. Um, and I thought I was excited about it because it was actually a great case that they bring in Emil Blonsky, and he makes a compelling case. He said, I did this for the military, I did to serve. The Hulk was a threat, he wasn't a hero. Um, I had to stop him, and then I've been put in prison for doing what my country asked me. That's not fair. And I thought this was really good. That was better than I had expected and hoped for. And I was like, wow, if we can have some episodes of this where you, again, consequences and me, but in general, wow, this is, yeah, that was good. And then it doesn't really, um, I don't know if it drops the ball on it, but it was a good start, I think. And they bring in Wong again, also uh, from the Doctor Strange sides of things, and they have a shallow conversation about um, who has jurisdiction. You can go in and out. You took a prisoner, and Wong, like, he took his part. He's connected to the abomination, and said, "Oh, I took him for greater good," and stuff like that. It doesn't go in as deep as I would like it. They make it very shallow, but I appreciate that it took steps in that direction. That was more than I hoped for. So I was cautiously optimistic. I suppose I could mention the origin. Um, I know in the comics that Jen is sick and she gets blood from her cousin Bruce, and that's kind of like how she gets Hulk power as well. And they did a bit of the same thing, and I said I don't want to compare to the comics, uh, but I am comparing it to its previous movies about how this happens in the show. In the show, Bruce Banner, because it's before he combined his Hulk Bruce thing, Bruce Banner is driving with Jen, his cousin. I think that's comically accurate, but they are related. They are driving and they get into a traffic accident because of a UFO, where they get wounded, and then Jennifer pulls out Bruce, um, and I guess that is where we're supposed to feel sympathetic for her, but I'm gonna talk that a lot later or in a different video. I'm just gonna say let's talk about it later. The main thing that I have difficulty feeling sympathy for Jen, but let me touch back on that. So Jennifer pulls out Bruce, which could be the, if you know writing, save the cat moment. I just didn't feel it and I forgot about it. She takes out Bruce, and then he has a scratch and she has a scratch, and their blood get mixed. But being the savvy Marvel fan that I am, one thing I remember in the comics. No, actually, I don't need the comic because he also mentioned it. I thought it was cool in the Avengers, if you remember that far back, when Black Widow recruits Bruce Banner. He talks about how he doesn't like any of it. He doesn't like being the Hulk. He doesn't want to be Hulk. That's kind of like why he lived isolated. And he mentioned, and I thought, wow, this is adult territory. This is great. This has consequence. This shows how miserable it is to be Bruce Banner, what he's struggling with, because he talks about it. He talks about shooting himself. I'm pretty sure, and I know that they tried that in the comic, and they don't show it in the movie. He just talks about. He says, I'm pretty sure Bruce Banner says, "I eat a bullet and the other guy spits it out." That is how quickly he can turn into Hulk. That is how it works. The Hulk has this very high sense of self-preservation. He can do that, and they bring it up in the Avengers because the Avengers is really, really well made. Just reading, you were writing genius on that one. They bring it up to show where he's at, and they call it back to it at some point because I'm pretty sure they drop the Hulk from a helicopter or something, or they drop Bruce, and then he becomes Hulk before he hits the ground. They do that again in not Love and Thunder, but Thor Ragnarok, but it's a bit of a joke because he actually doesn't turn into Hulk. He hits Bifrost, the bridge, if I remember correct, as Bruce Banner and falls into the ocean, but still survives. But that's Ragnarok because it's a lot more fun, and that is Avengers that introduced the Hulk. It's just that was in my mind. That's just how it works. I love these details. Thought it was great character build, and then She-Hulk messed it up this early by having a traffic accident where Bruce Banner get injured and knocked unconscious. That is not what would have happened. He would have turned into the Hulk. He would have, he survives, but he would have done just fine. He would have been able to stood up. They should have. I generally don't want to tell people how to do their job and stuff like that. Of course, we talk and critique and learn. But I would have come up with something different than that. The UFO is a whole stupid thing. We'll talk about that. But that was kind of where I'm like, this is not. There's this misunderstanding or disconnect between the previous characters and this character. Then, if I remember good, then Jen wakes up and is like taken into Hulk school at Bruce Banner's, and there's a lot of scene here that cause a lot of ire. I thought the one where Hulk does a little handstand to show yoga, and Jennifer does a more advanced one on one stand. I thought that was cute. I thought that was great. That was a good character moment that showed that she does yoga. She's more flexible, because that is the thing, Hulk, big, brute, muscular, where Jen can be athletic, sporty, flexible. Of course, if they punch each other, one on one, he's gonna win, but she doesn't break like. I thought that was great. I thought that was fun, and so it's not without merit, this show. And I think that, if I remember, there was some shows in general where this was good. Unfortunately, there was a lot of the other case where we had bad moments, but I'll try and talk about them. It's weird as the show goes forward and progresses. Jen talks about not liking to be She-Hulk, how she didn't make this choice, and she definitely doesn't want to be in Avengers. And she says that they're for narcissists or selfish people, even though, of course, we have two Avengers, Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff, Iron Man and Black Widow, that died to save the world. It's a stupid thing, got a lot of criticism. But she's always complaining about being the Hulk or being She-Hulk. Like there's a whole thing with, she didn't choose the She-Hulk name, and then they have an episode about that, how because someone copyrights it, and it's weird, and it's not what I expected, and I don't like it. I don't know if it's weird, but it's just petty. The weird thing is, to be She-Hulk would seem like a gift. The way that Jennifer is it, like that was the whole thing with the Hulk. Is this Dr. Jekyll, this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, this Frankenstein and his monster, and you can't control it. You lose control when you're the monster, and you hurt the people that you like, and you lose things you have, or you do damage. But She-Hulk doesn't do that. She remains in control. She just gets taller, she gets leaner, she gets more athletic, and then they have a whole big thing about how she doesn't have any hangovers. I don't get it. Why are we spending? And they bring it back up, but they're also not consistent to it. So they bring up that She-Hulk has a high metabolism. She can burn the alcohol. She doesn't have hangovers. But then sometimes Jennifer has hangovers, even though if she's She-Hulk for a moment, she would not have hangovers. But it's stupid, and it's some of those things that I don't think the show should have focused on. So Jen complains about She-Hulk. It's weird, and it doesn't make me like her, and I don't believe her. Um, and it brings me out of the story. And when we're talking about Jennifer here, she talks at some point about her career, and she is a lawyer, and she loses that. That's a thing in the show. She loses that because she's She-Hulk, even though she picks up it, or she catches the desk that's been thrown at a jury, and because of that she can't be a lawyer anymore, if I remember correct. It doesn't make any sense, but it also doesn't last long. That's what I talk about with the active protagonist. Inactive protagonist is a killer for your attention for your show in the video. So for the one guy that or girl that watched this and now is watching this, you'll get what I'm talking about. Hopefully other of you gets it, and if you don't, there's the video. You can watch it. I'm getting segued a lot. I'm sorry. But so Jennifer loses her job because as a lawyer, because she's She-Hulk. But then she gets a much better job, we're told, because she's She-Hulk. And it is because she's She-Hulk. She hasn't really earned it. It's not good storytelling, I think, because we constantly see that Jennifer is a bad lawyer, like a really bad. There's a lot of basic, general thing that she gets wrong, even though they actually, if I remember correct, started her very first case with her being like the super lawyer, and she has two assistants that she brings with her. They were like, whoa, Jen can do this, Jen does everything. But we can see it in the courtrooms, and those are a joke. Sure, you can have a show where you do it for fun, but they pointed out, like, there's a magician at trial, and he keeps taking out, fireworks and flags and I think a rabbit at some point. That's just not how court procedures work. You can have a show where you're not abiding to those rules. That's nice, but they even pointed out saying, how does this magician make it in here with all these things? Pointing it out doesn't make it go away. It doesn't solve it. It still felt disconnected. It still felt like this courtroom isn't real. It's a joke. It's a farce. And even if within that scenario, we are being showed how Jennifer doesn't prepare her witnesses and mess up being a lawyer. And it's pointing out by another lawyer that comes in and saying, I'm a good lawyer, and points out how Jennifer's a bad lawyer. And you can do a show of her being a bad lawyer and show her struggles, because we do, I think I mentioned that in my Blizzard rules at some point, we do sympathize in general. We sympathize more with the character for trying than succeeding. But there's not really much of that in this show. I can't even remember the names of her co-workers. In general, I can't remember names that well. Locations and stuff probably picked up. So don't take that as being that they were bland. Just in general, they were bland. I remember one of them, the male, collects shoes, and he needs the female to go help him because he can only buy one set of shoes, which I thought was funny because I had a neighbor like that once. He was a nice guy that also collected shoes the way that I collect Lego. Interesting. But I can't, they aren't, I guess they're shown as somewhat competent. They just seem like a bit filler. They don't really amount to much. At one point they have a weird little side adventure where they try to get a famous superhero suit designer, not Edna. What? That's her name, Edna Mole. No capes. Hey, She-Hulk doesn't wear any capes. Or maybe it is. But they try to get some clothes for She-Hulk and Jen. And clothes that can, she doesn't break her clothes all the time when she She-Hulks out. I didn't find it cute. I think some people would have. I thought it was more annoying. That's pretty much all I can say about those co-workers. I could have been a big fan of She-Hulk had it been a different show. Or it could have been fun with the consequence of superheroes and smaller heroes, and we could have had cameos. I think it's a good time in the MCU. There's a lot of smaller superhero established, especially in the TV shows. And given how they were willing to bring in Abomination and Wong and another that wasn't even from the original MCU character, that was great and could have had a lot more of that. Yes, I confess I just wanted more Jessica Jones. I like that show, or at least I remember like the first season. Kristen Ritter is amazing. She was good in that role. Am I a Kristen Ritter sim? Yeah, why not? Sure, that it could have been fun. Bring all that in. She-Hulk comes in a good place in the MCU timeline. Like Phase 4, we have a lot of things that they could have picked up on from the series to have fun with that, and it just didn't get there. But bringing in the cameos, and the shows also mention it. Let me finish the first thought. Bringing in the cameos, of course, has this, let's say, danger, or if you're not careful, it has the consequence of taking away focus of the main character, Jen, She-Hulk. And Jen brings it up in one of her fourth walls, where she's like, just remember whose show this is. And I didn't like that. I like the idea, I didn't like the execution. You could have done that better. You could have been more likable. I think part of that is the actress, Tatiana is her name. She didn't come across as likable. I think she has a hard time doing that in this show. Don't remember having seen her in anything else, and that's probably part of the issues. I find it difficult to like Jen, care for Jen, and when she does stuff like this, brings out saying, "Hey, it's actually my show," and she does it multiple times. She said, "Oh, we bring in like after they brought out Wong the first time, like, oh, everyone likes Wong," and it's like wearing a Twitter shield. I mean, I'm not on Twitter, I don't do that whole thing, and I'm not that big of a fan of Wong. It says She-Hulk on the can. I would have loved some She-Hulk. So it brings, having these cameos brings attention to the question, can Jennifer Walter, can She-Hulk stand on her own? And it seems like the answer is no. Adding Wong as a cameo, it didn't help for her to stand on her own. Adding the Abomination and the other MCU characters, it didn't really help Jennifer stand on her own, and she needs to do that. I thought she needed to do it. She did, because she didn't quite do it. And that can lead to, if you don't like the main character, if you don't sympathize, you don't feel for their case or them, yeah, you're not going to enjoy the show. And then, like, if you already, as I was in the camp, like, okay, Jennifer is not super duper fun, great, sympathetic, there is a lot in the show where you can take that as evidence and saying, oh, she's actually not nice. There's an episode where Jennifer is one of her friend's wedding. It's a friend out of like nowhere, barely remember being introduced. And okay, so the friend invites Jennifer at the wedding without having first told her, please be Jennifer, not She-Hulk. She says it as Jennifer approaches or arrives at the wedding as She-Hulk. And then she goes, I don't want to share. She's one of those brides. she wants all the attention. She says it, and I mean, understandable or not, you should be able to respect it at her wedding. So it's like, okay, I'm not gonna outshine you as being She-Hulk, because people love She-Hulk in this episode or in this show. But it would have been nice if she told it, because I think now Jennifer has trouble fitting her dress or something. Um, and then she fights at the wedding, so it all gets kind of ruined. Maybe some people think it's fun. I didn't think. I didn't think it's fun. Jennifer also tries to go on dates, where we will see that she is shallow. She actually complains a lot. It comes across shallow to me, of course, fictional characters. Going back, she complains a lot about her dating and it's unsuccessful, and I don't believe it. I don't believe that Jennifer Walter, as portrayed by Tatiana Maslany, I think is her name, I think she'll be very successful on Tinder and dating sites and in dating in general. Giving a good first-hand expression, we can say it straight to face. This is a good-looking, attractive, standard woman. She will have no problem. But in the show, another case where they can't make me believe it, she's complaining and saying, "Oh, it doesn't work," and then we see she gives in, and dates as She-Hulk. And I think the show had good intention, and it did something like half good, just didn't do it good enough, because then she gets a lot of other shallow dates where people are interested her in for She-Hulk. I mean, honestly, can't blame them. Not for the looks, but if you have something like She-Hulk in the world, you're interested in her as She-Hulk, and then later you can maybe learn her personality, which would be Jennifer's personality. But of course, She-Hulk is popular with dates, so she has some dates, but she has some shallow dates. But I mean, takes two to tango, and if they are both consenting adults, that's fine. Not what I expected in a Marvel show, but you can do it. You can have your toned down adult situation, everyday life. I can totally get behind this. And it was good thing that, because then the next day, Jennifer with her date, not She-Hulk, and he expresses disappointment and leaves, and that makes her sad, and I can somewhat sympathize with her, but also, you were She-Hulk. He was interested in She-Hulk. This is how that goes. Jennifer gets another date where a guy that is not She-Hulk, I guess the guy's not She-Hulk, but he seems interested in Jennifer. But then there's some plot devices. I don't know. I just don't think there was any of these episodes or scenarios where Jennifer came out as likable, and that sours the whole experience. I think I might as well just go to the ending. This is like, if I remember, talked in general about the show, but the ending is something to behold, because it builds on those fourth wall sequence that, if I remember correctly, She-Hulk had in the comic, but she has them here in the shows, and I said I liked some of them. The show kind of ramps up to a fight, an escalation, a conflict of a lot of different things, and then Jennifer kind of like just stops, and I mean, credit where credit due. This is brave. Gotta give kudos. I think was a very brave decision for a writer, or for the writers. I know there's more than one, to have it end like this. But She-Hulk then punches out of the Disney Plus interface and goes into a different show in order to get to the Disney Plus headquarters. He goes out in the real world. So that's a brave decision. I don't think it works, because of then what she does, and I'll talk about it. But brave it is. I thought it opens up a problem that all of these series have opened, and a lot of some of my favorite YouTubers and other YouTubers have made long observations and good observations about how we have problems with scale of conflict in the MCU with the series because of stuff like time travel and variance that was introduced in Loki, and now maybe She-Hulk has the biggest weapon of all, the fourth wall. She knows she's in a fictional story, so let's say in the next Avengers they're facing off versus Galactus or some big world-ending enemies, because it seems to be big world-ending enemies all the time. That's a problem. Maybe I'll talk about that further in another day. But let's say that there isn't nothing that stops She-Hulk from going back to the Disney Plus interface and then talk directly to the Disney producers, the Marvel producers, and complain or threaten them, because she actually maintains her power. And so She-Hulk now in real life, as we're supposed to believe, would be a very powerful thing. She could be able to force her will on the poor Disney and Marvel executive producers. It's just a rabbit hole, and I think it's something that's going to be ignored, like all of the things we talked about, that this series introduces as wow, the scale of power has been warped. Now everything can be solved with time travel, with variance, and some of it was on Doctor Strange was saying, oh, because now you can just go to another dimension, another universe, a multiverse. What She-Hulk does when she comes into our world through the Disney Plus interface is she goes to, of course, the Disney studio, and she demands to talk with Kevin, of course, being Kevin Feige, and that's what I said, it's brave, but I do not like it. This is such self-pleasing. She goes into a room to meet the writers, and I think one of them was the real writers. I think the other one was an actor, but I don't know. As I can tell, the writers have been very active on Twitter, but I don't do Twitter because I like to keep sane and as happy as I can. So I don't know about all these behind the scenes things. I'm not really into that. But given here with She-Hulk with that ending, she goes and demands to talk to Kevin Feige, or it's just called Kevin. They don't say Feige. We all know it. And they be like, oh, you can't talk to Kevin. Nobody talks to Kevin, and I would die or I would kill for Kevin. And it turns out Kevin is a robot with a stupid hat on, or something that looks like a hat. And this is where we get the scene where Kevin, the robot, tells her to not be She-Hulk because it's expensive, and then she complains and gets Kevin to change the end of the episode. Wow, I do not like this. It's a very bad proceedings. Have you ever watched the movie Next with Nicolas Cage? It's a movie about he can see the future, he can predict the future, but only for a short while. He used to be able to do it for a longer time when he was with his girlfriend. There's some Samsung and Sally in there, right? The guy with the hair. FBI needs Nicolas Cage and his future predicting powers to find a nuke in New York. There's an atomic bomb in New York, I think, and they want to find out where it goes off. Then Nicolas Cage finds it, but it's on the wrong building, so they manage to, so the bomb goes off, but then he wakes up, and the last half of the movie was just a dream, and now he knows where the real bomb is, and then he stops it, and the movie ends. And you feel cheated. I feel cheated out of the story, and it's the same thing here with this fourth wall breaking. It's it really wasn't good. I guess it was the end. One thing I always wanted to watch was the ending of Twilight in a cinema full of Twilight fans that didn't know the ending was coming. It's not going to be as long as the Nicolas Cage thing. In case you don't know, the ending of Twilight is a big battle between the vampires and the werewolves and whatnot. I don't know it. I don't follow that along. It was just a big battle with a lot of things, and a lot of people dies, and it had consequence until it didn't, because they found out that it's one of the vampires that can tell the future. So she tells the main bad guy vampire, saying, "We will all fight. A lot of people will die. You will die." And then he's like, "Oh, I don't want to die." And then he goes home, and the movie ends. It's the same thing here. This going into Kevin Feige, the robot that mans Marvel, just a self-pleasing. I did not like this, and as prone to ending as I am, this leaves a bad thing for the whole thing. Where do we even go from here? She-Hulk season 2, the first episode. Something happens to her. She drops her coffee. She goes into Disney office and asks Kevin Feige to change the show again. Not a fan. I don't think I have much more on this. As I said, I would like to talk about some of the things. I mentioned a little bit about saving the cat. I would like to make a video on its own about this, because I think She-Hulk has some amazing examples of things not working out great or not working out as intentional. And I can be a little bit facetious, saying maybe I can fix it, maybe I can answer it. I like to do that on this channel too. So that's She-Hulk. Wrapping up, I wasn't enjoying it. It's no, it's not. I don't like it. It's but I don't really like any of the MCU series. It's was a bit disappointing. As in my curiosity, I would probably watch season 2, or at least the first few episodes, if we get a season 2 of what's happening. In general, I'm not feeling the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the cinematic series, whatever the Marvel. I'm not feeling it's as strong as I used to. But I think that's general going around. They have trouble picking up the pace. Like, they have to find themselves, new people, new heroes, everything. But we'll talk about those when those release and when that comes up and when that's relevant. Right now, there was She-Hulk. No, I can't recommend it. Sorry. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this video useful, maybe even enjoyable. See you in the next one.